So welcome everyone. My name is Gerardo. I am the director of the Secrets of the Universe book club. And today I am not alone. Actually, I am with one of my very best friends in the book club, Natalia. And we have James Random, live from the United States, author of Ziggy, Stardust Me. Welcome, Brandon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
It is a pleasure that we can have. I bet to say this is the very first time you are attending a Mexican book club or a book presentation in our country, right?
Yes, that's very true. And when you approached me, I was so thrilled that there's a reader base there. I had no idea. So this is exciting for me. And you both look fabulous in your Ziggy bolts on your face. Just fabulous. Love it.
Thank
Yes.
you. As you may see, we try to reach Bowie-inspired outfits.
Yeah, I
So
love it.
also, Mr. James is using a Bowie shirt. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
yes, you can see it. Yes, I'm always
Yeah.
on brand for sure.
Yeah, so well, James Brandon also produced and played a central role of the gay Jesus in in Terence McNally's Corpus Christi for 10 years. He's also the co-director of the documentary film based on the journey Corpus Christi, Playing with Redemption. He's also the co-founder of the I Am Love campaign, which is an arts-based initiative bridging the faith-based of the LGBTQ plus communities. And he serves on the board of the Bay Area American Indian Two Spirits. They also play an important role in this story. Brandon has been a contributing writer for HuffPost, Believe Out Loud, and Spiritually and Health magazine. He's also a very um, talented actor for the theater.
Oh,
And
sweet.
today we are going to be talking about his debut novel, as I mentioned, Ziggy, Stardust Me.
Okay, so I guess it's my turn. So
Please.
I read this book in 2020 during pandemics, and it really hit me. I don't know, Mr. James, if you remember some weird girl from Mexico writing an email to you and saying, you know what? This book completely blew my mind, and I cannot find any words to thank you for the masterpiece that you just wrote. So I think
Sweet.
that was our first approach. I was that girl. 5 years later,
Oh.
I'm here, and I'm glad to be now celebrating also the fifth anniversary of your debut novel. So
Mhm.
thank you.
Thank
Um,
you. That's so sweet.
so
I
to
do
start,
remember that email, by the way. I didn't know that was
really,
you. Of course.
oh,
Yes, I remember all those kinds of correspondences. I had no idea it was you. It's so sweet.
okay, yeah, I was that girl. It felt important just to mention it.
Yeah, sweet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To start with, my first question is, I know you're very artistic person, sorry, and that you like arts, you like um theater and stuff like that, but how came into your mind the idea of, you know what? I'm gonna place my art into a book. I'm gonna start in literature, I'm gonna start writing. How how was that process?
Um, it was a gradual process. It wasn't something that just came to me, overnight for sure. As the introduction said, I've been doing a play for about 10 years of my life and before this, and was kind of looking for a new outlet in order to express my creativity. And a friend of mine in the cast of that play I was in brought me um, an episode of This American Life, which is a podcast here in the States. And in it was titled 81 Words. And those 81 words refer to the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual, which is the big book of mental illnesses that in the states that the psychiatrists refer to in diagnosing someone. And in those 81 words refer to how when homosexuality was still considered a mental illness, and those what the 81 words in the DSM is about. And there was this whole podcast about it, and I was so intrigued by it. And my friend who brought it to me said, I think you should write a play about this. And I was like, wow, I never considered doing something like that, but maybe, I don't know. And just, one thing led to another. And after listening to that podcast, I started to think about, if you listen to the story in this podcast, it's really fascinating. Like it's just a roller coaster emotional story. And in the end of this story, of this podcast story, there's a kid who these psychiatrists meet who ends up changing their minds about removing homosexuality from the DSM, and they voted to remove it at that point in 1973. And I just started to think about, like, who is this kid? I mean, they refer to this person and it's a real person, but my imagination just started going, like, who is this kid that would really have that kind of an impact? And that's where Jonathan was born for me, from that place. And then I just started to think about myself at that age, at 16. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, which is a very, conservative part of the country, and grew up in a Catholic home. And it was a very, it was a hard youth to know that I was gay, but I couldn't put words to that. I didn't understand it, and there was no real representation of that for me out in the world. So I couldn't name it, and I just knew it was wrong. That's all I knew, is that everything in my life, the Catholic Church, my conservative family, and people around me in my community just said it was a bad thing. And I had a lot of feelings about that, obviously, growing up, because I knew it wasn't inside me. I felt it was right. But when you're told you're wrong for something you innately feel right for, there's a whole slew of complex feelings that come with that. And so I used all of that and what I was going through at that age and infused it in this character of Jonathan. And that's really where it started for me. And then I had to think, who would be his love interest? And it was very clear to me. I mean, it came as soon as I figured out who Jonathan was. Webb came to me, because as was also part of the introduction, I'm a part of the Bay Area American Indian Two-Spirit here in San Francisco organization, and have been for many years. And I'm a huge accomplice ally for the community, have been for a long time, and have many friends there. And it was just a natural fit for me. I wanted someone who was the complete opposite of Jonathan, who was very secure in his sexuality, but was having identity crises in a whole different way, right? So that there was this conflict that they could see within each other and grow from each other because of it. And from there, the story just snowballed. I mean, a lot of it, in a lot of ways, wrote itself, because it takes place in 1973, and there was a lot of tumult that was going on at that time. And when I was doing some research and discovered that David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust, as Ziggy Stardust, was a huge influence for the queer community at that time, because what he was doing was revolutionary for music. It just all started clicking for me. I just used that album as my guide, Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. If ever I got lost in the story, I would just go back to the album and listen to the song, because the album is a story unto itself. And I would go back and say, where am I in the story, and where is this in the album? And I would just kind of go from there. And I mean, it took like 5 years to write the book, but that's what it is, And yeah, it was an inspired time for me to transfer that acting creativity, that I have, infuse it into the writing part of myself. So.
Just in case that someone watching us right now doesn't really know about Ziggy Stardust and me yet, would you please tell us in your own words, what is this story about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so To me, it's about two boys who fall in love in a world that won't let them, and how they decide that love is the ultimate battle-tested strength that one can have to fight against oppression. They learn that together because they live in a world in 1973, as I've said, that still doesn't really accept who they are. And it's still very much considered a mental illness. There are people in that time that would have easily gotten arrested had they been caught. And there are many people that were arrested who were, entrapped into some sort of like sexual encounter, and were thrown in jail, and their names were put in the paper, their addresses were put in the paper, and their lives were over, essentially. It was very much a part of that existence. So to me, that's what the story is about. It's about two young boys, 16-year-old boys, who very much are fighting for something that they both strongly believe in, but have been doing it alone for so long that they don't even know that there's a way out until they meet each other. And then they realize, oh, you're going through something too, and maybe I can help you with that. And that's the journey they go on. There's 73 itself is a huge obstacle that they have to overcome. But along the way, they meet a lot of people who don't agree with what they want to be doing with their lives. And they have to fight those battles too. But ultimately, I think what they learn from each other is by living in a state of authentic love, everything is possible.
Okay,
That was a
thank
beautiful
you.
response.
Thank you.
So Gerardo and me, we both studied international relations, but um, it came as a surprise to the both of us about the two-spirit people. Like we were like, we're supposed to study the world, and we don't know the existence of these people until we read this book. We were like shocked, okay, our minds were blowing. Like it's I mean, like, it's acceptable to be queer in any type of society. That was like, wow, marvelous.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Yeah, I cannot hear you.
I lost your audio.
Oh, but now,
Yes,
okay, sorry.
that's
I don't
okay.
know what happened.
That's
Okay,
okay.
so as you say before, the community has been having very hard times, and also here in Mexico the situation is not good. I mean, we have a lot of prejudices. In some parts of the country it's more acceptable, but it's not something that, it's normalized like it should be, right? Just two people just being in love, and that's all. So we have a lot of these prejudices, most of the time coming from the church.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I was completely shocked that in some part of the world there was a society where being queer was acceptable. So
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, what was your first approach with the two-spirit people?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I mean, I think we can't even start to answer this question without first just acknowledging the colonialism, right? Like you can't have a conversation about something like this without first saying we all live in a colonialist world, basically, and especially in the States, in your country as well, I would assume. And with colonialism comes this sense of puritanical othering that, if you don't fit into the white cis heteronormative box, binary box, you're something else, you're other than. So that's the umbrella of all of this that we should always acknowledge first. But beyond that, when it comes to the two-spirit community, I will speak to it only from my perspective as a white person, as an ally. and know that I'm a huge part of the community, but there are complexities to it that even writing about this and working with the community as I did on this character, there are things I won't never understand as a white cis male. And I know that, but that's why it was important for me to make the story through Jonathan's lens and not through Webb's lens, because I'm not telling the story through Webb's experience, right? I'm telling the whole story through Jonathan's experience as he's learning about all of this. So that was incredibly important to me. So that's also my filter through which this umbrella exists. And when it comes to the Two-Spirit community, they were, I mean, Native Americans, obviously the first Americans in our country before colonists came, and they were accepted in their tribes. They were as Two-Spirit people, which generally speaking, this is a much more complex answer to this, but in a very simple way, just to talk to your audience about it, Two-Spirit folks have a sense of they were the healers of the tribes because they embodied the balance of the male and female energies within. Again, that's a very super simplified way of saying it, but just to have a conversation about it, that's it. And they were, you know, the healers, they were the medicine people, they were the aunties, they took care of kids, you know, they were revered in their tribes. Colonists came, wiped away all that, as they did many things in this country, and made them othered. Not only Native people othered, but specifically Two-Spirit people othered. And they have since, over time, have had to reclaim that even within their own tribes, right? It has been so brainwashed. Unfortunately, colonists have so brainwashed folks that it's taken a lot of work just to get through to their own people about, you know, what it means to be Two-Spirit. And like you, Natalia, I didn't know Two-Spirit existed for the longest time. And it wasn't until I was on that tour with the play, which I mentioned before. You know, this play I did was a gay Jesus play. That's also a very oversimplified version of what this play was about. But I played Jesus, who happened to be gay, and it's the whole story of Jesus from nativity to crucifixion. So you can imagine what came up with that for some people, right? Like not everybody liked it, but the people who understood it knew that we were talking to them, the 2S LGBTQ plus community, telling them a story that they grew up hearing through their lens and to them. And it made them feel more welcome at the table they felt thrown away from, right? And so we would have some really intense, beautiful conversations with people after every show. And one of those conversations was in San Francisco after we did a show, was with some Two-Spirit folks who came to see it. And I was so embarrassed because I never had heard the term myself. I didn't know what it was. And they were so beautiful about how they expressed themselves and how they told me who they were. And they were very open to my questions. And it was just a really sweet conversation. And it just opened my eyes. This was many, many years ago, opened my eyes to realize if I'm going to ask people outside of my community to understand us, to understand who we are as a queer community, I need to understand it myself first. Like I can't expect everybody else to do the work for me. I got to do it. So I did, and I joined Bates just as a volunteer to help them out for the powwow. Got to know them, was incredibly moved, incredibly transformed by the whole experience. Friends that I met then at that time are just now still my friends 12, 15 years later, because I just started to understand myself better through their lens even, um, and just really honor the work they do. I do whatever I can to help them lift their voices. And that was part of my intention. I don't want to make this like the white savior thing at all, but it was part of my intention to, as you say, bring awareness to the community through this story and specifically through Webb, because I know a lot of people, and I've heard, Natalia, from a lot of people since then. As you said, this book's been out 5 years. So I've heard from a lot of people since then who are similar to you, who did not know about this and are suddenly open up to the experience of it and are now looking it up themselves and are informing themselves and educating themselves, as I did. And their story is being heard more. And I'm not saying it's because of my book. I'm just saying the more we talk about it, the more we can allow this sense of othering to disappear, right? And we can all understand that we're a part of this family together, even as our individual letters that represent this umbrella of our family are very unique and unto and should be celebrated individually. But as a unit, we're a family, and it's important to know all the different aspects of our family. So you know, I'm a huge advocate for the community and huge ally and accomplice, and just feel very passionate about it still. And will probably, you know, I mean, I will for the rest of my life, because I'm just so passionate about the work they do, and how much they've changed my life personally, you know. I don't know if that answered your question. I kind of went on a tangent there, but I appreciate having these conversations because I think they're important um, to have, especially when you yourself don't identify as two-spirit. I think it's important within those communities to have these kinds of conversations with each other, um, to you know, understand that there's ways we can all be allies for each other, you know.
Besides the very important representation of indigenous people and Native Americans in the story, the David Bowie inspiration is something that caught your attention when you are reaching for the book. And something I really enjoyed about Ziggy, it's not only how you use the David Bowie alter ego as an alter ego of David Bowie, but also Jonathan's alter ego, looking for hope, looking for the light between all the darkness. And that's something I really enjoyed, reading your particular way of using music as a protest resource. So I would like to ask you, how was your process of selecting not only David Bowie's songs, but also music from jazz singers or Black person music as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that question. Because music's a huge part of my writing process, and for each of my books, but obviously this one specifically because I mean, look at the title, right? So, um, and you know, I think for me, when I was starting to write this book, just started to listen to. I immerse myself. I'm such a nerd when it comes to like research. Like I just dig in. I love to go, and I don't really actually like doing it online. I like to go to like the Historical Society in San Francisco and just I love digging through stuff. I love going to libraries. I love digging through books. Like, you know, it's just who I am. It's just how I immerse myself. And one of the things I started to do was listen to music. I think 70s music is pretty awesome, actually. Like I didn't I am not, you know, I was born in the late 70s, so it's kind of past me in terms of what I actually grew up with. I basically grew up with 80s music. So the 70s music was a kind of a new genre for me to listen to anyway. And once I did, I just really liked it. And it helped me dig into the world easier. You know, I wanted to be as authentic as possible when it came to creating the world of 1973 for readers, because a lot of us, especially if I'm writing a young adult novel, and nobody who is a young adult was alive in the 70s, right? So it's important for me to make this as real as possible, make this 1973 another character of the book, basically. And for me to do that, music was the way in. And the more I listened to it, the more I thought each one of these characters, like I said before, David Bowie he had created this alter ego of Ziggy Stardust, and it was just completely revolutionary for the time. And it really spoke to kids, queer kids at that time, who also felt unseen in the world because there wasn't a lot of representation for them. They felt seen. And that really spoke to me. I'm like, I know that feeling. I know when you know, I know when representation matters, and I know when the artists that spoke to me at a young age, that influenced me and helped me to come to terms with my own sexuality and identity. And so I just it just made sense that you know, Jonathan would have this kind of a similar escape plan. Like he uses his imagination as a form of escapism and self-preservation and self-protection. And Ziggy Stardust, the character that David Bowie created, is also a product of his imagination and escape. And I just saw how those two just could really meld together. Um, and I spoke earlier about how the album influenced me, but in terms of the other music, then I just started to think, well, if Ziggy Stardust is going to be Jonathan, that I want to have somebody for each of these characters as an artist they can really, you know, hold on to as their source of inspiration, as their source of um, social justice, kind of, uh, you know, weapon, I guess is the word I want to use. And for Starla, Jonathan's best friend, it's Roberta Flack. And she was, you know, that is someone that is just got this silky smooth voice, and it just felt very Starla to me, because I think Starla is kind of silky smooth and has this, you know, just she's just so empowered in herself at such a young age, and I felt Roberta Flack embodies that. And with Webb, it's Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, which was another revolutionary concept album of the time. And and it's very it's a strong and poignant, and there's a lot of social justice themes in that book, or in that album. And I just felt Webb would absolutely resonate with this. So I wanted each of them to have their own soundtrack, as it helped me navigate their voices in the writing of it, but also helped me navigate their journeys, their character arcs, as they went forward. And I just think I made a Spotify playlist because there's so many songs referenced throughout the book. I wanted people to be able to have like a visceral experience with it, so that when they read it, they can refer to those playlists and be like, oh, that's the song in this moment. Let me play it and see what's going on here. Because it really does, it's the music I was actually listening to when I wrote it. And I think it really does kind of enhance your, you know, reading experience. I think music does that. I think music connects us in so many ways, where we all may think different things. A song can really bring us to the same place of a similar feeling. And I think that's the power of music. And I wanted to like really, you know, honor that, especially in this time.
Thank you for answering that question. I think, yeah, music is really important, and I think, as for me, a huge part of my life. Um, I wanted to highlight something you said in the author's note at the end of the book. Basically, a phrase that it says, "Please don't waste another breath being anything else. There is just no time."
Mm,
So that personally resonated with me because, for me, my way of finding my identity has been, you know, kind of rough. But as for now, I think I'm comfortable with the person that I am, and I identify as bisexual and um, genderqueer also. I don't really like labels, but it's been hard, to come to this point where I say, okay, I feel myself, right? So that
mhm,
specific quote for me was like, yeah, you know what? Like, I have the right to be myself. And I want to
mm,
share a brief experience. I've been to the States several times, and there was a time when we went to have a dinner with the friends from there, and they have a daughter. But before we arrived to their house, my parents told me, okay, they have a daughter who used to be a boy. I mean, they have a boy who wants to be a daughter, you know? And for me, it was like
mhm,
simple. No, they don't have a boy, they have a daughter. That's period,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
So during the dinner, I noticed how everyone was suddenly avoiding her, and she was just like isolating from everyone and everything, because she hasn't like started with hormones or any kind of transition, like physical transition. And I
Mhm.
thought like, like she's just like so little. She was 16, and I remember myself being that age and having no one to talk about how I felt and the things that I thought that they were wrong. So I found the space and went to talk to her. And I didn't like go and say, okay, like, let's talk about trans people. No, no, no. I was just like treating her like normal person and
Mhm.
normal conversation that you have with people, right? So
Mhm.
for me, it was like that experience was kind of heartbreaking, but also I was full of hope because when I got to know her, I realized she's just a kid. I mean, she's just a kid. Like, she's a girl, period. Like, she's no, like, how to say, like, strange person that you have to coexist with, right? And I don't
Mhm.
know why it's so hard for us as a society to accept these things. And personally, with all of the things happening in the United States, and
Mhm.
I'm kind of worried about queer youth, right? So,
Mhm.
my question to you will be, what are your thoughts about this matter, and how do you think we can contribute to the protection of queer kids' rights?
Wow. It's a lot to unpack, but I would say what we're doing right now is how we can do it. I mean, it really comes down to simple. I think if you it's hard to say, I want to help queer youth find themselves, or, these big umbrella things, which can be very daunting to think about, right? Like that feels almost impossible. Right now in the States, there's so much just conflict and vitriol going on right now for the against the community, that it's scary at times, and it feels very impossible. The odds feel impossible sometimes. But I think if you break it down to exactly what you just said, which is having a simple conversation with someone who identifies as such, and just letting them realize that they're normal for who they are, and what their identity is, that it's nothing. One of the things Jonathan says in the book is what you just said, which is, I can't wait. I'm paraphrasing, even though I wrote it, I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember exactly how it's said, but it's something about uh label, about the labels thing, where he can't. I look forward to the day we don't have labels in the world. That is something I really feel. But I also, because I look forward to when we just look at each other as just another human, that we're sharing this human experience with, basically, right? Like I don't need to know what's going on in your personal life unless you want to share it with me. But we're doing this together. There's a lot of stuff going on in this world that is so much bigger than how you identify and who you choose to love, right? There's so much more. And we can connect on those things and get past the label part. That said, we live in a world where labels are really important right now, because they bring together communities, and they bring groups of people together to let them see each other, in this world that maybe isn't letting them be seen. And so I appreciate the idea of labels right now, because there's a sense of identity that comes with that maybe people are still struggling with understanding. But I think, in terms of, to answer your question, in terms of helping queer youth, that is my main goal as a writer. I feel it's very important. Representation is very, very important. I did not have it growing up in any books. And if I did see it in books or TV shows or movies or the news, it was always that the gay person was being killed at some point, or they were very stereotypical um, caricatures, I guess is the word, that I just didn't identify with at all. Like, I'm not a hairdresser, for instance, or something like that, right? Just the stereotypical gay character. I didn't relate to me. I didn't see that as me, and I knew I wasn't that. So I was like, well, if that's what it is, then I'm not that. I don't know what I am. And I just think the more varied um, representation we can have that reflects our such fluid community now, it's important to just keep telling stories like this and to allow people to see themselves in these stories, because I think that's where real healing begins. When you really start to see yourself in someone else, you start to realize how not alone in the world you are. And that's also why I feel like it's important for me to identify my books that have queer historical elements in it. Because what I know to be true is when you see yourself represented in history, when you understand there were people that came before you that existed who are you realize there's a newer sense of belonging in the world that you never had before, because it's ancestral, right? It's in our DNA. It goes back generations. These people existed. So you're not alone in this. And the more we can talk about our history, our lost history, the more we can really connect to who we are in the present moment. And again, I go back to what you just did, and I applaud you. Just having a simple conversation with someone to let them know they're okay. I see you. You're great. Keep going. You're not alone. That is where real healing starts. And I think the more of those kinds of conversations we have, which is why ultimately I think Jonathan and Webb's journey is so important, when they discover that love is the ultimate, battle tested weapon, the more we can use that love to put out in the world, and those haters aren't going to even impact us anymore because we found each other as a strong community.
It is a lovely way to put down in words most of your mission. And
Mhm.
as I was telling Natalia, um, this is the first time I read about the two-spirit people, but it reminded me of a group of society here in Mexico, to be more accurate, in the Zapotec regions at the south of the country in Oaxaca.
Mhm.
The Mushes, it's a group of people that they could be born male but represent themselves as female, or
Mhm.
they could be intersexuals, and also, they are very well respected within their
Mhm.
societies, within their groups. So it is
Mhm.
shocking for me to realize that the prejudices are more a modern society thing. That's
Mhm.
something that we live in the city and not in those groups that we never focus on. So
Mhm. And is that still even now, or has that changed, or is that still they're still held in that sense of reverence in your community? Has it changed over time, or has that pretty much stayed the same?
it has changed in the way we in the city see them, but it's been the same in their groups. So I think it's
Mm.
something beautiful to
Hmm.
see that they have a place, they have a sense of belonging, that
Yeah,
they are considered a blessing, the same way that
yeah,
the two-spirit people also, um, they celebrate being
yeah.
you. So
Yes, yes.
it and I believe that's an opportunity for us readers to reconnect with our own cultures as well, because
Mhm.
sometimes we forget. We don't really
Yeah,
look back, or we don't look beyond. So it
that's
was
right.
a beautiful thing for us to explore after finishing this book and having the heartbreak that we just got for reading it as well. But I
Wow, that's
think
beautiful though. I
yeah,
love that. That's really beautiful. That's such a beautiful takeaway from it. To feel that reconnection to that part of your community that's extraordinary.
yes. And it's incredible how a book can change that in a
Mm,
reader.
mm. Yeah, it's fascinating because I've had, similar to what Natalia said about writing me, there's been many readers along the way that have written such beautiful things that I really truly did not expect. Truly, I thought I was writing a love story. I knew I was writing a love story, but I just never thought about the impact it may leave behind. And um, I was certainly very conscious of what I was writing. I didn't take anything I wrote for granted, and I was very conscious of writing about communities that I'm not identifying in, but I was also not, I just didn't know that it would impact certain people the way that it has. And that to me made me realize that the real, 5 years later, I'm able to see this now in retrospect a lot easier. Um, the the power of the written word, right? And books really can change lives. And as an author, there's such an important responsibility that comes with that. Now, I say that, and I don't mean to say that, it's, I think we need as authors just to tell stories and to tell them as authentically and true as possible. Like that should be the main focus of a writer, not to change worlds and not to change thoughts. This is my thought. This is my personal feeling, but to write a real, authentic story. Because personally, I feel when you really write true characters, it's when readers can connect to it easier and then do feel a change. But if, for me, I'm not going in writing with the intention of changing hearts and minds, I'm just writing with the intention of writing a real story, as real to me as possible. And with that has come some amazing conversations that I've had that I never anticipated or expected. And I just feel, especially within the queer community, we aren't, it is easier for us as a queer community to hide our parts of ourselves that we don't have to show in the world. For some of us, I don't mean that for all of us, but certainly for me, certainly it's true for me. If I didn't want to let people know I was gay or something, or if I was entering a community, some part of the states where I felt unsafe to be out, wouldn't necessarily have to be out, right? Like I could hide that part of myself if I needed to feel safe. That doesn't exist for everyone, and I know that. But I also think that's why books are so important, because it allows us that place to escape to that's kind of hidden, and allows us to um, feel into those experiences more in an intimate, personal setting, while we can explore it on our own selves without having the distractions of the world around us. And it gives us a deeper connection to ourselves that way, I feel, because we're able to do it in our own time and space. So I do feel like books are that for the queer community specifically. They're a great tool for self-realization and help. And a deeper connection to soul, really. But that is not something I intend to do when I write. I really don't. I just intend to tell a true story, and hopefully a good one at that. That's really all I really want to do. Um, so it's a blessing for me to hear these kinds of stories, to know that, like for you, when you were able to connect to a part of the community, you know, the local culture there in a different way is such a beautiful thing. And it's not at all, I would have never anticipated that being a part of this. So, and that's on you. That's for you, because you were able to take something from the book and do something with that, right? That's for you. Not everybody would do that. So that's an important part of who you are too. And that's something to, recognize.
We really appreciate your works. um, and it's funny like how you say you were just trying to write the story, to be as true as possible, and then you ended up helping a lot of people to find their identities. So wow, just
Mhm.
thank you
Mhm.
for that, James. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
I know you published a second book called The Age of Vain, and that you also were playing on musical theater,
Mhm.
musical play, yeah. about the book, but what is next for you? I mean, can you tease about your upcoming projects?
Um, yeah, so this is my first day out of my writing cave, actually. You two brought me out of it, so thank you for that. I've been in a real deep writing cave for the past 2 years, really. And about to turn in a draft of a new book that I'm very excited about. It's another queer YA book, and it's a treasure hunting adventure love story book, and I just deals with queer history and all the things I love to dig into, and queer love in all its forms and all its messy forms, which I think are important, as well as the lovey-dovey forms. And so that's as much as all about to say about that, because there's that's a I never talk about my books until they're actually done, because God knows this is going to go through many more rewrites until anyone ever sees it. But so that's where I've been. Beyond that, as you said, Ziggy, well, Edge of Being, my second book, came out in October of 22, and is another book I really love. It's a quieter book. It's just, it's not this big love story book like Ziggy is. It's more of a boy who's trying to figure out who his dad is, and along that way discover some queer history that his dad may or may not have been a part of. And it's a whole quest into self connection and self-love. So I really, to me I love that book. It's a beautiful book. But beyond that, Ziggy is being turned into a musical, which has been so much fun to just develop with these beautiful writers, these two writers in New York who just really understand the story and understand the characters and are taking them to a whole new level. So we're in development phase of that. That takes a long time to create a musical. But we already have done some productions of it down in San Diego with part of a college, a university that my friend is a part of and directing it. And we'll be in New York in November doing a reading of it, and we'll see. It's got a long journey to go to get to anywhere where the public will see it, but I'm very confident in that piece. It's exciting to take this book out into a new kind of creative medium, and it combines all of my like things that I love to do, theater and writing and creating, and it's just and telling stories and social justice through storytelling, and all of those things are coming onto the stage, and it makes it for a much more visceral experience, I think, for someone, because it's just right there in front of you, right? So I'm excited for that. I'm really excited. Yeah, that's been me so far.
That is just great, and we are so excited to know what's coming then. Thank you so much for letting us know in advance. And also, whoever, everyone that's watching us right now, please don't miss Ziggy, Stardust Me. It is a beautiful ode to David Bowie fans, to the Native American community, and also the queer kids. So it is the best book to celebrate Queer History Month. Also, don't miss our next book presentation with Aiden Thomas, December Trials, next
Oh, it's
month
such a
in
good book. I
November.
love that book.
Oh, you
Yes.
do?
Oh, it's so good. So
That,
good.
that's a very good thing. I mean, you're invited even if you want to.
Oh, thank
If you
you.
want to join Aiden Thomas, we will be pleased to meet you there.
Oh, that's great. Are you going to talk like you're going to have a book club with him, or?
Yes,
Oh, that's great.
for October and November, because he's
Oh,
coming to
fabulous.
Guadalajara this year.
Oh, that's great. How cool.
Yeah,
Oh my God. He's an amazing writer. Yeah.
he
He's very
is.
lucky.
He
Yeah.
is. And I wish that someone here in Mexico can translate to Spanish Ziggy
I
Stardust,
know.
because we
Me
want you to
too.
meet our country.
I know, me too. I wish I had any kind of say in that. I really do. But, this being put out into the universe, who knows? Maybe it'll happen now.
Yeah, at some point.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Natalia and I will have to translate the whole thing.
Okay. I'll let you.
Thank you very much for your time, everyone. And also, James, it is an honor to have you here. And
Um,
we are very glad to have this conversation with you.
Me too.
So
Yeah,
really
thank you so
appreciate
much.
it.
It was I loved our conversation. I loved where we went with it, and I really appreciate the depth and thoughtfulness that we shared together. It really means a lot to me too. So thank you.
It means the world to us too. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is like kind of a dream come true for me, you know.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
when I just finished your book, I was like, you know, I want to ask him a lot of questions and just to talk with him, you know, sit down and say, okay, let's.
Yeah, you're
So
sweet. I know we need more than an hour for that, don't we? I'll have to come there and do a whole like night or something.
I know. So really appreciating you for taking your time and to be with us and share your experience and beautiful, beautiful words. Thank you, James.
Thank you very much. Thank you.